Ladies and gentlemen, is it time? Are we here? Am I doing this? Am I making a new thing? Guys, this is a podcast. What? I know. It's crazy. Um, I I'm gonna be honest with you. I didn't think about turning this into a podcast until this morning, right? I'm so behind that I'm recording this on the same day that I'm posting it. And so either later or even now, you might be able to listen to this on Spotify, maybe Apple Podcasts, whatever I can figure out. It'll be there. But for now, at least it's on YouTube, which is probably where you're watching this or listening to this. Um, this is Authony's sitcom tier list, or whatever I end up calling it when I edit the video. I don't know. I could change my mind. Ladies and gentlemen, first episode is about Malcolm in the Middle. If you're not in the loop, last week I put out a video basically saying that I'm going to be watching every single sitcom that has ever existed or will ever exist, and that'll be my life. Alongside other things, of course. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can see that I have photos of musical albums that I put out as well. So I'm going to be in multiple places on Spotify. I'm taking over that application as well as like Apple and such. But yeah, alongside those things, I am going to be watching as many sitcoms as I can in my lifetime, and coming here every couple of months. Like I'm not gonna have like a weekly schedule. It's not gonna be something you should expect episodes for at any given time. It'll just be whenever I end up finishing a new sitcom, I will sit down, I'll sit in front of the mic, and I'll talk about it. And um, you'll see various backgrounds depending on what my living situation is in the videos, but that doesn't really matter too much on the audio only, does it? So it really depends on how you want to absorb this content. As such with other podcasts, I'm gonna be super honest and open with you right now. I I don't listen to podcasts like ever, so this is a new thing for me. Um, if I do anything wrong, let me know. If I could do anything new that's more interesting, also let me know. Where can you let me know? You can let me know in the YouTube description or in the YouTube comment section. You can let me know on x.com at Stephen Authony. You can, I don't know, Threads, same handle at Stephen Authony. Just let me know if you, when or wherever you can, if you'd like. Okay, so being the first episode, I got to figure out how to talk about the TV show, what to say. I have some talking points that'll hopefully fill at least a half hour. We're gonna try to milk this TV show as much as I can. Give each TV show at least like some attention, some love, even if I don't like it. But this time, I can confidently say I like it. Malcolm in the Middle was a really fun show for me to watch, and I kind of knew that going into it. Like I started off episode one. It starts off pretty strong. Like you get a sense of what you're in for right off. It starts off right with like Malcolm explaining the Earth for some reason, and then you never really get something like that again. Like he of course he popularized like turning to the camera and talking to it. Like he's having a conversation with somebody. He's like, "Get a load of this guy." Like he as far as I know, popularized that whole concept. But like the whole Earth thing, I guess, kind of comes out of nowhere at the start, which is like it's whatever. But it doesn't matter at all because it's something you forget about when you're watching the actual show long term. Um, but yeah, we see Malcolm's relationship with his brothers. We see Malcolm's outlook on um, other students. We see the formation of his lifelong friendship with Stevie. We see um, where each kid starts off and their respective relationship with their parents. Because even though they're treated very similarly, I think being the different like levels of, I say levels of children, but what I mean by that is we have like oldest, second oldest, middle, and youngest, um, at least in the first few seasons, and seeing how being the oldest is different from being the youngest in a family like this, especially with the kinds of parents we have, who we'll get into a little later when I talk about individual characters. But that's the that's the premise in a nutshell. I mean, it's just a family of four boys and two heterosexual parents who are, getting into some hijinks. So it's often the kids getting into hijinks, like doing something bad, and then they have to either atone for what they did or hide what they did, either with or against their parents. And there's a lot of different premises where the parents are working with the kids, or the parents are against the kids, or the kids are against a completely different third party that the parents don't even know about. I don't know. Each episode is kind of its own thing. Like, you don't really need to know much prior. Like, you don't really need to have much prior knowledge to watch each episode. Like, if you walk in on somebody watching this show, you can catch up pretty quickly and enjoy each episode just the same. But yeah, the premise is it's just a family. They get up to some hijinks. Bad things happen to people because of the family. Bad things happen to the family because of other people. And it's just, I don't know. It's a fun family show. Barely a family show. There's swear words. There's adult topics. I think it's like I don't know. I don't know if it's like a kids show. I don't know if that's how kids shows were back in the early 2000s, because that's when the show premiered. It was like 2000 when it came out. But yeah, it's a fine show. I don't think it's anything special. Plugging it in on the tier list, I put it at like, I'm torn between A and B, but I think I'm gonna slide it up to A, because there's a lot of things that this show does that I really love that I'm gonna get to in a little while. But yeah, let's dive into characterization. So one big thing that I'm going to be doing when I talk about sitcoms is, well, one, I'm going to explain what the whole podcast is going to be, given this is episode 1. I think the biggest conversation topic is just going to be each of the characters, because like each sitcom that I've looked at, or like any sitcom really, it just has a core cast that is pretty much there from beginning to end in the show, right? So that's this case. We got the whole family, and now I'm going to be diving into some spoilers. So yeah, it's a decent show. It does its premise well. It dives into a bunch of different topics in a bunch of different ways that I think, in ways, can be creative, but also, I don't know. The execution could be better in a sense, but I'll get to that when I get to spoiler territory, which I'm entering right now. So I'm gonna start with the main character, the title character, Malcolm, and I just want to talk about how his character changes, and each of these characters kind of change from beginning to end of the series, because I think that's an important thing to look at when you're looking at a sitcom: is, do they change, and if they do, how so, and is it a positive thing or a negative thing? And unfortunately, we're starting off kind of weak here. We're talking about Malcolm, how his character changes from beginning to end, and I think at this at the start of the show, he's talking to the camera. He's got his own like little personality. He's super smart, and he's very like, I don't know, whenever somebody does something stupid around him, he's very like, yeah, get a load of this guy, or what's this guy doing? Or like, if he does something stupid, he's like, I'm in trouble, and he's like trying to find a smart way to figure things out. And I think that makes for a very unique main character for the show. I don't know, it gets you excited to find out how a really smart kid perceive situations and handle situations like this. You just see Malcolm like enter these situations, and he's like, all right, let me figure this out. And then he figures them out, and that's it. And he's the king of the world. I don't know, he doesn't feel like it, but I think seasons 1, 2, maybe even 3 of Malcolm's life within this TV show is kind of like his peak, right? Because it kind of goes downhill from there. And rather than looking at people do stupid things and laughing at them, he just becomes the stupid thing for people to laugh at, right? I don't know, he becomes a joke. He becomes self-absorbed. He thinks like, oh, I'm the smart one, everybody else is dumb, I deserve the world, and everybody else deserves nothing. He is actually like, this is one of the biggest character like downfalls that I guess I've ever seen. It's like, he starts off as this like really high IQ, really smart kid, and then he just kind of becomes just like everyone else. Like, he's just, I don't know, he's like a nerd, yeah, and he gets valedictorian, sure, but like, and he's really smart. But by seasons like maybe 5, but mostly 6 and 7, you can't really tell that he's like a super intelligent kid. You can just like, I don't know. And maybe that's just like the TV show highlighting that no matter who you are or what kind of kid you are, you'll always have like, I don't know, high emotions when the hormones kick in, or like you'll always be like this angsty teenager, which I guess can be true, but he never really snaps out of it. Like I feel like we've all kind of been there, but we kind of snap out of it by senior year of high school, and by the time we get to college, and by the time we see him in college, like that little bit that we saw him in college, and by the time we see him, I don't know, growing out of his high school era, he doesn't really change back to the good old mature, um, smart like kid. He just becomes kind of just like his brothers, mostly like his brothers, but also just kind of like everyone else. And it his uniqueness really faded towards the end of the series. I don't know. Whenever I was watching an episode and it would dive into different like plot lines and sides or whatever, I would always rank each character on how much I wanted them to win. So if it was like Reese and Craig had differences, I would want Reese to win because he's higher up on my list, if that makes any sense. Um, and I would have like a ranking for these characters, and it would change throughout the series. And Malcolm, of course, being the main character, was pretty high on the list early on, but then like he really moved lower. And the more I got to know the character, the more I was like, I don't know, I didn't really like him, and I kind of wanted him to fail at whatever he was trying to do in the episode. I don't know. I just really don't like what they did with this character. I don't like where his character went. And I guess I can mention this a little bit early on is the show kind of loses its magic when the kids become adults, right? Like Francis became adult pretty early on, so that didn't really change much. But by the time Malcolm and Reese were like 17, 18, the show just was just kind of like, I don't know. It was there was a sense of charm when it was like when they were kids goofing off and doing random stuff to terrorize people or make people's days worse or whatever, just for the sake of chaos. And that was like really fun and enjoyable. But by the time they get to adults and they're still doing that stuff, it's like it kind of loses the fun. You know what I mean? And like when Malcolm's having sex with a shaman, you know what I mean? That was a crazy plot twist. And Dewey's smoking cigarettes. It's like when they're actually like doing the adult things that like it fits because they are adults, but it's just I don't know. It's not. I can't look at Malcolm the same way in season 7 that I do in season 1. Right? It's like these are just kids having fun versus these are just adults having fun in a weird way now. Like it's weird now. But I don't know. I think with any show, it gets weaker the longer it goes on. And I think it stopped in a decent place because obviously, like once you graduate, that's really when when you lose your childhood. But I never really got a sense of Malcolm actually maturing. Like he was always super like decently mature in the earlier seasons, but like he was still a kid. But then by season 7, when he was actually an adult and in college, I never got the sense that he matured. He was always just. I think what happened to him is he knew that he was smart and he knew he was special, and he just let all that get to his head. Which is kind of a shame for the character. But you know, such is life. You can't always you can't always have the good character arc. Not everyone can be Francis, who I'm going to talk about now. Um, we started off with probably my least favorite character arc because that's like the main character. You're kind of supposed to root for him. But now I want to dive into Francis, who had easily the best character arc, in my opinion, across the entire show. So we start off, we see him, he's getting arrested, he's blowing up cars, he's banging chicks, so much so that his mom sends him to military school. And even in military school, he becomes a delinquent. Um, he's terrorizing the other students. He's terrorizing himself. He's terrorizing the higher ups there at the middle school. I keep wanting to call it middle school. I've done a take of this podcast already where I just call it middle school all the time, and it's military school. Gosh, so military school. Yeah, he's still goofing off. He's still being a delinquent, but like I don't know. I guess he can kind of still get away with it because at military school he's still a kid. I guess he's 16, and then when he gets to 17, it's like, yeah, I don't know. I guess Francis early on Francis could kind of get away with it because he didn't start off with a sense of maturity like Malcolm did, right? Malcolm started off with a sense of maturity and he went down into immaturity alongside his brother and the other kids at school, while Francis started off immature and the more bad things that happened to this guy, like for him it was one step backwards, two step forwards, right? Like he would get into an argument with his mom, drop out of military school, but then get a wife and get a house. And then he would lose the house, but then he would find a job on a ranch and get free living and work there with Otto, who I miss, by the way. One episode, I don't know what happened to Otto's character. They just kind of whenever whenever they would make a change for Francis, it was always like out of the blue. Like all of a sudden he had a wife. It's not like he met the girl or whatnot. It's just he came home and said, "I'm married, by the way." And then when he left the ranch, he was like, "Yep, I did this thing. Otto didn't like it, and he kicked me out." But still, I think even then, like looking back at all the things that he's went through, looking back at how his mom treated him, um, how he handled it, and how he handled all the situations he was going through, it was so satisfying to see his ending, where he's got a house with Piyama, he's got this nice job, he's taken after his dad and going the office route and being in this like cubicle that his dad spent most of his life in. Which brings me to my favorite line of the whole show, which I'm kind of going all over the place. Give me a break, okay? It's episode 1. Sorry, I'm going all over the place. But my favorite line in the whole show, let me pull it up, is when Hal's in court for, I don't even remember. I think he got framed for something. And he says, "You know those nature shows where a wasp paralyzes a caterpillar, then injects it full of larvae? It stays alive for weeks, completely aware, feeling every little bite as the larvae devour it from the inside. I sat in a cubicle every day envying that caterpillar because at least he got to be on TV." And that's just super beautifully written, super beautifully executed, super beautifully um, placed and done and whatever. But yeah, he's taken after his dad. He's also hopping in that cubicle, living the office life, and he's happy about it, right? Because as the quote suggests, Hal isn't happy with what he does, but he does it because he feels like he needs to. Francis is the opposite, right? He doesn't feel like he needs the job, but he loves doing it, and he makes money off of it, and he gets to support his wife. I was really hoping by the end of the series we'd see that Piyama was pregnant, because that would just really, like, Francis's arc was kind of capped off towards the end of the series, but that would really do it. Like if Francis got to experience life on the other side, like he was always against his mom and his parents for how they treated him, but just even the implication that Francis would have to experience that same battle from the other side, like from the other team, would just have been like the icing on the cake for me. But the cake was still amazing. He was my favorite character in that whole show, which brings me to my negative about his character, and it's that we never really saw him, right? I wanted like a long term, maybe few episode run where Francis is home and he's part of the team, but he never felt like he was part of the family. Like really. We had this one episode. It was probably not my favorite episode, but one of my favorite moments is when they're at, I think, this country club, and these people are being really snobby towards Lois, and the kids are like, "We know what to do." So they get into this golf cart, they drive across this table, and then they land the golf cart in a pool, and it's a nice moment for many reasons. One, because they're standing up for their mom, which they don't do often, but when they do, it's really nice. And two, um, all the brothers got to be together, and this was before Jamie. But yeah, all the brothers got to be together. They got to, all 4 of them, be rebellious like this together as a team. And Francis got to be a part of it because we really don't see Francis be a part of their lives much, which really sucks because whenever it cuts to Francis, whether he's at the ranch or at the military school, it's like we're watching a different TV show, which sucks in that sense. But I mean, it was a pretty good character arc. It was a pretty good show. It was like we got this whole group of people who are all doing their own thing, and then we got to follow this one character who is kind of related to this group, but is also off doing his own thing. And well, I did like the overall show. I think Francis's story was really well written and had a nice gradual change to it. Now, another character I think was executed pretty well was Dewey. I think Dewey was written well. I mean, the show's called Malcolm in the Middle, right? And we expect that to be like, oh, it's just because Malcolm's the middle child. But I think really the kid in the middle is Dewey because, in a sense of like intelligence and potential, right? Because Malcolm, he's a Harvard student, like valedictorian, top of the class. But Reese couldn't be further from that. Like, right, he's bottom of the class. And then we get Dewey, who I think is a nice middle ground, right? I'd say he's maybe slightly above average in terms of like his intelligence, and maturity, but really like he's really the middle of that spectrum, at least when it comes to intelligence maturity. And I really like what they did with his character because they treated him like the middle child, more so than Malcolm, right? Because the parents would always forget him. They were always focused on Malcolm or on Reese, but Dewey was always forgotten about. Whenever he had like a piano recital, his parents wouldn't go. Whenever he would try to do something big with his piano career, his parents would try to sabotage it subconsciously, like I think in the seventh season. Dewey was way more so the middle child than Malcolm, in my opinion, whenever we saw a story from Dewey, which we didn't really get a lot of early on, which makes sense because he was super young. But I'm glad when I don't know when Dewey hit middle school, it was like yeah, we got to see more of him, more of his story, and more of what he could probably do. I mean, we don't see him graduate, and we don't know what he does post public school, but we can infer. He's probably a successful musician. We'll be able to tell when the reboot comes out, which I'm decently excited for. But I think Dewey's character, yeah, it was executed well. I like how he's smart. I like how rather than put him in the Krellboyne class, which is what they called the smart kids, they put him in the special needs class, which was Malcolm's fault, of course. But I just kind of liked how the TV show handled that sort of situation, saying like, yeah, teachers don't really pay much attention to the kids in special needs classes because they don't think that they have the potential. But Dewey is the person who shows up and he's like, no, these kids have just as much potential as anybody else in this school, and you should try to um, see that and give them as many resources as you give everybody else. And while definitely agree with that, um, the teachers also just disagree with that. They're like, yeah, you're just a kid. And they don't listen to him, just like his parents. No, I mean, I think that whole arc was handled well with him and the other kids, and I love the bond that they created. And even though Dewey didn't want to be there at first, I like how they all kind of became his friends, even though he like kind of reluctantly helps out and whatnot. I think Dewey got the life that I think Malcolm should have had if the show's going to be called Malcolm in the Middle, right? The forgotten child, the child who's mature from the start pretty much and the end. I mean, he's not mature in like season one, right? Because he's like really little in season one. But like, as soon as we start diving into his character a little bit more, we start to realize like how mature he is. Probably more so than any of his brothers, really. So I think if we're talking middle child, I think that award goes to Dewey, right? Um, and I just love what the writer did with his character and how his story progressed throughout the series. Should have been Dewey in the middle. And then we got Reese, right? Reese's character arc, if you want to call it that, is pretty static from start to end, right? We start off, he's the dumb one. He's a bully. He gets into more trouble than I think we've seen Francis get into. Um, and then at the end, he's super dumb. He's a bully. We see him get into more trouble than I've seen Francis get into. And that's it. That's his character arc. He is absolutely terrible at communicating with women. Even when he ends up getting girlfriends, like he doesn't change when it comes to how he views being in a relationship or how he views talking to a woman in a way that will be reciprocated kindly. And he has like this moment where the boys are protesting a strip club and they're on this billboard, and he comes down and he's like saying like, I don't know, women should be appreciated more or something like that. And it's like this beautiful speech, but then later on he doesn't actually change, right? Which I guess kind of fits his character because that's the same with like anything else when it comes to him and how he views certain situations and groups and whatnot. But his character really doesn't change, and I think that really fits the type of character they set up, the dumb bully who will never mature, and he doesn't. He really doesn't, and I'm glad that he doesn't because it really fits with the character. Another character that stays pretty much the same throughout the whole series is Hal, right? He's pretty clueless when he needs to be, and I mean that in the sense that like in the poker episode, right? He's thinking that he doesn't fit in, and while everyone's thinking like, oh, maybe he's being like he's thinking racially like I don't fit in, but in reality he's like, no, you guys are just so good at poker, and I'm not that good, so I don't really fit into this group. And they're like, oh, well, come on, join us. And then they join, and then he joins them. Like they're seen playing poker throughout the show, and that's like one of my favorite callbacks. Is like whenever we see them playing poker together, and Abe and his friends are like joining him on different journeys throughout the episode or helping other people. But also in a recent episode that I watched, with the one with when Lois has mono and Hal's going to this party and this girl's hitting on him. He's not even thinking that she's hitting on him, right? Like that doesn't even cross his mind. He's just so innocently clueless, and that's like the best part about his character, and I love it so much. Oh my god, I'm glad they retconned his hair being a problem. What I mean by that is like we only see his hair being a problem in 2 episodes. One is when they go to a water park, which is like the season 1 finale, I think, and then of course the start of the season where they have Lois shaving his hair, and they say they have to do that every month. And in a way, in a storyline sense, in a writing sense, it doesn't make sense that we would only see his hair being shaved once when it's a once a month thing. But I think I'm gonna give this one a pass because I really hated it whenever they were shaving his hair. I don't know. There's a lot of gross aspects of this show because obviously it's a bunch of young boys being boys doing gross things. But that's just one thing that I'm glad they got rid of. That's just another thing. Now I want to talk about Lois and how she changed throughout the series because she did change quite a lot when it comes to how she viewed what it means to be a parent. And I guess one aspect that didn't change is her control because even in the last episode when Malcolm's like, you can't tell me what to do after I leave because I'm leaving, right? And then Lois is like, no, but you got so much potential. I want you to do this. And that didn't change, which is, I don't like that. I feel like she should have, by the time the third kid is graduating, which is technically the third, because I think we'll say Reese graduated like maybe he was earlier in line than Malcolm. But um, by the time three of your kids have left high school, you should know by now what level of control you should have as a parent. You know what I mean? And she just doesn't learn that. She thinks even like it's one thing to say like, okay, you're not an adult right now. I kind of have a say in your life, and that makes total sense, and that's kind of how it should be. But it shouldn't be like you decide that Malcolm does all these things and then becomes the president and whatnot. That shouldn't be like decided, and I hope he doesn't become the president when I watch this reboot. Um, that just shouldn't be up to the parent, and I don't know. I guess it kind of makes sense that she didn't realize that because she's always been kind of a control freak. But I don't know. It would have been nice to see her overcome that. But what she does overcome is how she treated Francis and her old method of just brushing her kids under the rug and forgetting about them, and how she was wrong to do that to Francis in the sense that like she's entering the military school. There's this one really sweet moment between her and Francis where she apologizes to him for everything she did, even though he did a lot of bad to her. She apologizes for how she reacted, and it's just such a sweet scene that we see where Lois really and truly, for the first time, understands how wrong she was when it came to dealing with what her kids do. Um, and she tries to atone for it as best as she can in that scene. It's really powerful. One of my favorite scenes in the show, and that really went to show like how much she had changed. Because season 1 or even season 2, Lois would never even thought about apologizing to Francis because she's the victim when it comes to Francis being reckless. And later on, she really reflects on how she responded to these misbehavioral outbursts and whatnot. Yeah, and she really comes to terms, I think for the first time ever, with being wrong. So that's just a beautiful moment to me. Let's see. And then we got Jamie. He's just a little guy. He's just kind of chilling. Um, he doesn't really have a character arc. He's a baby and a toddler. So, but let's go with some side characters. I'm gonna start with Craig. Craig, let me be honest with you. First, like 3, maybe even 4 seasons, I hated the guy. Right? I whenever he came on screen. Remember how earlier I said like I would rank people on how much I wanted them to win in the episode. He was at the bottom, right? Whenever something bad would happen to him, I would cheer. There would be a new party every night in my house that I watched an episode where Craig lost, right? I hated the guy. I don't even know why. I think he just gave bad vibes when it came to how he first acted towards Lois, right? Even knowing she was married and all that, I just didn't really like him. I think based mostly on that. And even when like she kind of shut that stuff down and made it so like, no, this is never gonna work. I'm married. And even then, I just like I really thought he was annoying. And I guess I'm gonna be honest. My opinion kind of changed on him towards the last couple of seasons. Like, he was more empathetic. He was he was I think more platonic towards Lois towards the end of the series. Like, one thing that really stood out to me and really, I don't know, helped me find him less annoying was the scene where, like, it's the episode where they're trying to find like the mole in Lucky Aid or whatever, and they think it's him, but it's not him, and he's just trying to make a surprise party for Lois. And even though nobody shows up, he still puts on like a really good party for her, and he's just super sweet. And this time in a platonic way, I think. Um, so when he actually like fully embraces the platonic nature of their relationship, he, I think, becomes a pretty decent, awesome character. I don't know. He still had like maybe a couple annoying qualities, but like at that point, I don't really care. I think um, he's a character who definitely moved up my list as the show came to a conclusion. Now, a character who went the opposite direction started off as a character I loved and really turned into a character that I hated to see win. Honestly, that's Stevie. Stevie was really funny in the first couple of seasons. He was really charming. He was really close to Malcolm. His character went so downhill when his mom left, and it didn't pick back up when she came back either. Um, Literally everything out of his mouth was, "Well, at least you have a mom. At least your mom didn't leave." Malcolm breaks his leg. He didn't, but like if he were to, right? So he would be like, "Yeah, but at least you have the other leg," right? Like he just became like, whatever you're going through, I got it worst, which he did, but I didn't need to be reminded of that 28 million times. Neither did Malcolm, poor guy. Um, like, yeah, to his credit, he had it the worst out of, I think, anyone in the show, except maybe Craig, but at least he could walk, right? At least he had a mom. Actually, no, he didn't. um, Shoot. but, but still, okay. Still. Um, yeah, I don't know. Stevie had his own things going on. I didn't like how Stevie was reacting to the things. And I guess like, yeah, he's a kid and he's gonna react in these ways. But I don't know. I guess my point is kids are gonna react that way, but I find it annoying when they do. And I found it annoying here. Maybe I was supposed to feel that way. I'm sorry if I wasn't. But he even when his mom came back and he was less so the crybaby that he became in like the middle seasons. His character really just never picked up for me after that. Like he kind of came back and became like super cool and everything, but I don't know. I think his character was tarnished from the moment he became super annoying for seasons, like entire seasons straight. Um, Gosh, yeah. Now, going back to the flip side of characters that I hated and then liked towards the end, I'm going to talk about Ida and how for most of the show, she is absolutely despicable. Actually, my least favorite character in the whole show. Um, she does terrible thing after terrible thing, and then eventually she saves Dewey's life by losing a leg, and that's a big moment, or it's supposed to be. But she's still a piece of crap, I think, from then on, until the last episode. She is super close with Reese. She's super interested in what he's doing. She is super empathetic when the family gets covered in whatever Reese's concoction was in the season finale. But that really comes out of nowhere. I really wish she had a cleaner character arc than being terrible, 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 and then being awesome in the finale. Like, she was amazing in the finale. But yeah, I really wish they'd done better things with her character in the sense that like when they got to the better things, it was more connected or I guess well deserved because she had like a good moments in the finale, but it didn't really seem like a payoff. It was just like, oh, she's cool now. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's all I really want to say about her character. And I think that's all I really want to say about characters, really at all. I think I've gone through all the arcs, um, all the important side characters. I think those are the most important three. I do wish we got more closure on what happened to the rest of Malcolm's Krellboyne class. We see like I can't even remember the last time I saw like Lloyd or Dibney, or is it Dibney or Dabney? It's Dabney, I think, right? Hold on. Yeah, so we got Lloyd, Kevin, Cynthia, Dabney. Yeah. These guys. Um, I can't remember the last episode I saw them in because it was out of nowhere that they stopped showing up in the show. And Stevie shows up even towards the end, like he's graduating with everyone. But the Krellboins just disappear. And you like, I get Malcolm wasn't as close with them as he was with like Stevie, but he was pretty close with like Cynthia, right? Like they never officially dated or anything, but like I don't know, she just kind of disappeared. Um, Lloyd and Dabney, um, and them. It would have been nice to see him at graduation, at least in like the final episode, right? But we just didn't, and they just kind of disappeared, and that really upset me. So that's another thing. I already talked about my favorite line, my favorite moment. I guess I want to talk about something that bothered me early on in the show, and I guess still kind of bothered me towards the end. But by the time I finished it, I've come to terms with it, and that's how often the episodes end abruptly. So let me walk you through this real quick. The episodes, since there were so many main characters and so many different things happening, there would be a bunch of different plot lines going on in the show, right? We'd have Malcolm doing his own thing, maybe Reese and Dewey are doing their own thing, and then the parents are off doing their own thing. But with multiple stories like this comes the tendency to forget about some or not finish some completely. And I can't think of any examples, but if you're to watch this show and really like think about how think about each episode's plot, by the time you get to the end, a lot of plot lines, maybe even most of them, are just over when there should be more of a payoff. And honestly, I hated that watching this show, and that really brought me down to like BC territory, right? Because I was thinking like, dude, this TV show, while it's really good at making these plot lines and playing with the premise, it does not know how to pay them off. And for a lot of it, it didn't. But the reason why I moved it up to an A is because the show ends abruptly as a whole, right? We see Francis get a job, and he's like, "Oh, don't tell mom," and he doesn't, right? Lois never finds out about the job on screen anyway. Um, Lois actually gets pregnant. She just whips out a pregnancy test. I'm positive, and that's the last we see of the parents. And then Malcolm and Reese are both janitors for their respective schools, except Reese is janitor for the high school. They're both janitors, and then Malcolm runs off to class, and that's the show. That's it. That's over. Um, yeah, that while I would be upset in any other case, I'm happy that the show ended that way here. And let me explain. It reflects the episodes, right? It makes what I thought were mistakes. It takes what I thought was mistakes in writing and like just I don't know, just amateur writing overall, I guess. It takes that and makes it self-aware. And what it also does is it hammers in the big overarching theme of the show, and it's like a huge one, right? A lot of the episodes play with the idea of interpretation, right? Um, I guess a big reason why a lot of these episodes end so abruptly is like, okay, it's setting up this thing, and it's like, okay, based on what you know about the characters, what do you think happened, right? Do you think Lois found out about what Malcolm did in the episode? Do you think I don't know. What do you think happened to the Krellboins? What do you think happened to Craig's monkey? Where'd that guy go? I actually probably explained that, but um, and I saw something. I'm like, I even like tried to do research. Like, did I miss something? Did I miss where the Krellboins went? And somebody came up with a good theory that like Cynthia left after she mentioned her and Malcolm having sex, right? And it's like we're supposed to interpret a lot of these episodes in our own way, just like how we're meant to interpret which bowling trip that they went on was actually the real one. We're supposed to interpret what Reese did that was so diabolical and like, what was that, season 5, season 4? I don't even remember. But this show leaves a lot for interpretation. And I think that's something it does strongly, mainly because that's what it's going for, but also because it steers into that idea so well. And I think yeah, if you're big on interpretation and coming up with your own theories and endings, Malcolm in the Middle is a great sitcom for you. And also, if you're not into those things, but you're into like just family TV shows, you're into funny jokes, funny timings, um, this show is nothing if not hilarious, right? It's actually like super funny. A lot of humor, a lot of what I would once consider bad writing, actually wrapped up in a nice, neat little bow, in the most ironic way possible by not wrapping anything up in a nice, neat little bow, and leaving space for more, which is why the reboot's happening. It's not really a reboot. It's more of like a, what is it? I don't know. But they're bringing the show back. They're bringing in a new series called Malcolm in the Middle. Life's Still Unfair, and I'm excited to watch that. So yeah, just replugging it into the tier list. Malcolm in the Middle, A tier sitcom. Next, I think I'm gonna be talking about I Love Lucy, and after that, I'm gonna get to Parks and Recreation. So, thank you for watching or listening, depending on how you consumed this content. And I will not be seeing you next week with a new sitcom. I will be seeing you whenever I finish I Love Lucy. I'm gonna get better at this, I promise. But stay tuned for that. And have a good day.